Good morning or afternoon, everyone. I'm Deborah Kafoury. I'm your Multnomah County Chair, and I want to start by thanking everyone for joining us here today. At Multnomah County, we understand the deep and urgent concerns that our community members feel about the dramatic increase in gun violence. We know this as an organization that works to create safety and opportunity for our neighbors and our neighborhoods. But as an organization made up of people who live, work, and raise their children alongside the community we serve, we feel it sharply too. That safety, however, has recently felt elusive as our community continues to confront a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic and a surge in gun violence that has traumatized victims, bystanders, and neighborhoods. That has to change. And we are here today to share the work that Multnomah County is doing to strengthen and protect our communities, as well as some new investments that we believe can and will increase safety in the short term while building and maintaining long-term safety and stability. At the same time, we know that the old war on crime approach to public safety, which leans almost exclusively on law enforcement, prosecution, and punishment, is both ineffective and causes profound long-term harm, especially on communities of color. Our regional public safety system must be able to respond to the root causes of harm in order to stop crime now and to prevent crime in the future. This requires an immense amount of expertise, collaboration, and community trust. The problem is great, and we're here today to demonstrate how Multnomah County is responding to that challenge and what we're doing to move forward with urgency, holistically, and in close coordination. The county's role in building and upholding public safety involves numerous pillars, including behavioral health, prevention and rehabilitation services, community partnership, law enforcement interventions, and prosecution. None of these function on an island. The success and effectiveness of each depends on the others and the extent to which we share our values, share our information, and align our efforts. And to that end, we have been working together and will continue to work together to secure our communities and to keep people safe. I'm grateful to be joined today by people at the center of that work. My fellow elected officials, District Attorney Mike Schmidt and our Sheriff Mike Reese, my colleagues, Ebony, Clarke, and Erika Preuitt, and an invaluable, integral community partner, Joe McFerrin. Each of them will be sharing the steps that we have taken and the efforts to come as we work together, both within the county and with our community, to put an end to this violence. I also want to say that I recognize that many community members want to see a greater sense of urgency from their local governments. And I assure you that Multnomah County has taken this urgency to heart, and we are doing all we can to prioritize expediency. But we're also working to balance it with the intentional work that it takes to build trust with the communities who are most at risk of harm and the development of approaches that are proven and driven by data. And even then, the efficacy of our local county efforts are often tied to the capabilities and urgency of other local jurisdictions and agencies. At Multnomah County, we understand how critical it is for the safety of our community for us to work together across our departments, and just as importantly, to work in close partnership with the communities and the people who are closest to the solutions. Thank you, and now I'd like to call up our District Attorney, Mike Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair Kafoury. Good afternoon. Amidst a gun violence epidemic and a debilitating backlog in the courts due to the COVID-19 epidemic, which remains an imminent threat to our community, new ground must be broken through strategic investments. However, in this moment of urgency, we must not go backwards to the tough-on-crime era policies that seeded where we are today, hollowing out families and creating cycles of poverty and oppression. Instead, county leaders are rising to this challenge with a collaborative, modernized, and evidence-based approach. To the communities most impacted by gun violence, to neighbors hearing shot fired in the middle of the night, like my neighbor yesterday that I was talking to. And most importantly, to the victims of gun crime we work with every day, help is coming. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment where public safety, health, and wraparound services working in harmony will drive results while rebuilding trust among impacted communities. I'm grateful to county leadership for working with our office to provide 6 new staff, including 2 investigators and 4 prosecutors. This investment means more hours spent interviewing witnesses, analyzing evidence and facts, supporting victims, and prosecuting cases. Last week, I released a firearms data dashboard that empowers the public to view all gun crimes prosecuted by the District Attorney's Office over the last 3 years, and the dramatic increase in just this last year. It's searchable by date, location, race and gender of both victims and perpetrators, and the type of crime committed. The dashboard provides my office and the community and other elected leaders with a blueprint to address this issue. If you look at the dashboard map, you'll see many of the communities where this is happening have suffered from disinvestment for a long time, inside and outside Portland city limits. This is a regional issue. These are places that are suffering from a loss of hope and trust. And at the same time here and nationally, huge numbers of guns are flooding our streets, which inevitably leads to more gun violence. Gun sales are up by 65% in 2020, and that trend continues into 2021. All of this has created a tinderbox situation, and we're seeing the results of it today. Where I'm sitting, I have a job to do. A prosecutor is sent to every single homicide, whether it's 4 in the afternoon or 4 in the morning, leaving their loved ones to be with victims and their families at some of the absolute worst moments of their life. They work side by side with other law enforcement to build the case from the ground up in the moment that we learn that there's been a loss of life. By the time we arrive at the scene, the bullet casings are already on the ground and another member of our community has tragically lost their lives. There's no one thing we can point to that got us here. Likewise, there's not one solution. That's why we're all here today. Locking people up and throwing away the key, as the chair said, is a failed experiment. We'll not prosecute our way out of this violence alone. The colleagues that stand beside me today are experts in the upstream solutions, which are inextricably linked to our ability to curb this crisis, together with safety, science, and health as our North Star. Thank you. And now speaking will be our Sheriff, Mike Reese.
Mike, thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. As your Multnomah County Sheriff, I'm committed to building a community that is safe and welcoming for everyone. I believe that public safety is the foundation that allows for thriving communities where we can raise a family and grow a business. Gun violence today is eroding away the safety and security of our community. We've experienced too many shootings. This year we have had 30 shootings in the areas that we patrol. That includes our 4 contract cities of Maywood Park, Troutdale, Wood Village, Fairview, and unincorporated Multnomah County. Obviously, the city of Portland is gravely impacted with too many shootings resulting in property damage, injury, or death. We began seeing trends of escalating gun violence in the summer of 2020. We started immediately working with our partners at the Gresham Police Department, the Department of Community Justice, the Office of Violence Prevention, Healing Hurt People, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the FBI to develop intervention and investigative strategies based on the following principles. First, gun violence is a priority. It's a crisis, and our community deserves our full attention to this and the resources necessary to stop the violence. Second, community partners are crucial in developing strategies to intervene in all forms of gun violence, including domestic violence, people that pose an extreme risk, criminal acts using a firearm, and group or gang violence. We're committed to investigating every single act of gun violence in our community and submitting the evidence that we recover, such as shell casings or firearms, for analysis to create actionable information. And finally, we're going to work with and have been working with our partners at the FBI, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, and the U.S. Attorney's Office on the Safe Streets Initiative to investigate and hold accountable the people responsible for this gun violence and illegally providing firearms to people in our community. Our approach at the Sheriff's Office is based on collaboration, prevention, and intervention. Some of our efforts include prioritizing investigations involving firearms, particularly reducing the number of guns in the hands of people who pose the greatest risk. Increasing the visible presence of Gresham police officers and deputies in hotspot areas. Our Special Investigations Unit is focused on criminal organizations with a nexus to guns and illegal drugs. We dedicate a sergeant to the very difficult work of gun dispossession. He works tirelessly to ensure firearms are removed from volatile situations, including domestic violence, where a restraining order has been issued by the court prohibiting an offender from possessing a gun. And like the district attorney, I'm grateful to the chair and the Board of County Commissioners for their support for this vital position in the safety of some of the most vulnerable people in our community. With all of these approaches, since the beginning of this year, sheriff's deputies have confiscated 719 firearms, including several machine guns and with high-capacity magazines. This is a significant increase compared to 2019, when deputies seized 267 firearms. Why does this matter? We know that we're not going to stop every negative encounter between 16 and 25-year-old males. But by removing guns from the mix, we reduce the lethality of those encounters, and we keep guns out of the hands of those who pose the greatest risk to our community. We also recognize there's room for continuous improvement and that we can't do it alone. It takes the support of community members impacted by gun violence, the support of elected officials, and your support for the dangerous work our deputies do every day. We need an investment from the state of Oregon in regional initiatives. And finally, I propose that we expand our approach in East County as a regional solution to the violence we see spilling across city, county, and state lines. Thank you very much, and I'd like to invite POIC President and CEO Joe McFerrin up to speak next. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chief Reese. Sheriff Reese, Sheriff Reese. Stand corrected. My name is Joe McFerrin, President and CEO of Portland OIC and the Rosemary Anderson High School. I have lived in Multnomah County all my life. I am a proud graduate of the Ockley Green Middle School, Grant High School, and Portland State University. I love my community, especially the students, trainees, clients, and families we serve every day at POIC. During my 26 years, we have partnered with Multnomah County and many community-based organizations to inspire, connect, and coach families on their journey to success. Yet one thing that I've heard all throughout my life, and that is, hurt people hurt people. The escalating violence in our community that we're experiencing tells me that too many people are hurting, more than I've ever seen. What can we do? What are we doing? I know the individuals standing beside me here today are committed to healing our community. So I want to call out 3 crucial items POIC does in partnership with Multnomah County. 1, we want to continue to partner and collaborate to provide culturally based organizations the support they need to help families thrive. We've been doing it for many years, and we want to continue to do that. 2, we want to increase opportunities for access to culturally specific behavioral services. That's happening now, that's happening in the past, and we want to continue to make that happen. 3, we want to make considerable and sustainable investments in those with relevant lived experience who are passionate about doing the necessary work to help our most injured community members heal. Since the pandemic hit and violence spiked, I have met with many community members who have innovative ideas and are passionate about contributing to the healing of our community that our community so desperately needs right now. As a part of this, with the support of Multnomah County, POIC has created the Public Safety Village, which consists of 14 grassroots organizations, and we're building their capacity to effectively curb the gun violence that we're seeing today. And we hope that the sustainable support will allow these individuals to do this work tomorrow and for many years into the future. I am personally committed to supporting the village, together with Chair Kafoury, DA Schmidt, Sheriff Reese, Director Preuitt, and Director Clarke, to make this happen. This effort lifts up and activates community members to join us in the healing process. I truly believe with all my heart that those closest to the problem are also closest to the solution. Thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce the Department of Community Justice Director, my friend, Erika Preuitt.
I'm having that same earring thing. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Erika Preuitt, and I am the Director of the Department of Community Justice. We don't have to tell you about the devastation and the pain that has occurred in this community. You have felt it. The people here today have even reported on it. I grew up in this community alongside Joe McFerrin. As the director of this department, the Department of Community Justice, and a 27-year veteran of this department, I've not only seen the toll violence takes on our community, I've seen it as someone who's worked as a probation and parole officer with high-risk clients and their families. This is a crisis. Our community deserves safety. Our community needs to know what has been done and what will be done moving forward to address this crisis. We are working to get guns out of the hands that they don't belong in, and to ensure accountability to get people connected to resources and services that they need. We are active partners with the East County Gun Violence Prevention Initiative in responding to gun violence. That includes probation and parole officers who work to uncover guns in our community. We are also working hard to supervise, sanction, and hold people accountable. And we're working to provide and build up resources and services for our clients. Moving forward, we are working on plans for call-ins to respond to the gun violence crisis in our community. We are in the process of targeted public announcements from our criminal justice and community partners. This recorded address will relay a message that this level of violence is not acceptable and will lead to consequences. And it will also educate about services and supports available, such as quality employment opportunities and mentoring. This message will be dispersed to people on our caseloads engaging in unsafe behavior. It is also true that those who are closest to the problem are also closest to the solution, to quote Joe McFerrin. We're building out programs with our partners like POIC, Latino Network, Erika, NAYA, and Northwest Family Services to continue to push toward solutions. We know that connecting people to resources and programs designed to intervene and support families helps people move forward. We are building on existing services and, quite frankly, rebuilding some of them after a once-in-a-century pandemic. Many of the services we knew worked, changed, or went virtual because of the pandemic, so we experienced some setbacks, but we continue to collaborate with our partners and hold ourselves accountable. We also need our community to connect. We need to come together. We need our families to tap in to the resources that are available. We need people to engage as much as possible. Tell us what you need. We have a team of advocates who provide advocacy services for victims and survivors of crime. Our Victim and Survivor Services Unit includes culturally specific and bilingual advocates who support victims from our Black, African American, Latino, and Latina community. Through the unit, we also provide critical notifications that victims have a right to request. And we have an emergency fund. These funds can help with immediate safety needs for entire families, such as safe housing, transportation, utility, security cameras. We know we need to lift up our families and our community members. And we also need caring community members to help others rise in our schools and in our neighborhoods. Our community is one of unforeseen possibilities. Connect and tap into the resources available. We are also working closely with our health department to get much needed behavioral health support to the people on our caseloads. I am proud to work closely with Ebony Clarke, our health department director, every day, and we work on these initiatives. And I'm going to give her some time to speak about the health department programs.
Thank you, Erika. My name is Ebony Clarke, and I'm the Health Department Director for Multnomah County. As the Health Department Director, I understand how crucial and how critical we play a role in providing and mitigating and addressing the issues of community violence and gun violence. This past June, when Chair Kafoury and the county commissioners passed a once-in-a-lifetime historic budget, not only specific to addressing the needs of COVID-19, but also addressing the rising issues of crime, we have an opportunity to respond. We have an opportunity to respond in a meaningful way and in a real way, which requires something new. It requires enhancements, it requires innovation, and it requires us being willing to take a risk and step outside of the box. Because we know that violence takes shapes in so many forms and fashions, we know that we have to have multiple strategies, which requires us from moving away from the status quo and stepping up and trying new things. As the Health Department Director, that means that we're working to bring a public health approach to violence prevention, which is something new. How do we bring the human side to our work? So often, when we think about and we hear and we talk about responding to gun violence and community violence, oftentimes we hear about shifts in policy. Oftentimes we hear about suppression. But what tends to be missing is the services and supports to address the human needs. For the health department, what does it mean to bring a public health approach, it means that we are working from a community-driven process. We are working from something that's ground up. That means that we all hold a piece of the puzzle, and that we all have responsibility, and that we all must hold each other accountable. It's not only the responsibility of the community, it's not only the responsibility of law enforcement, it's not only the responsibility of our service providers, it's not only the responsibility of our schools or our businesses. It takes a village, and we all must work together. Just as many spoke, I too am born and raised in Portland, Oregon. When I think about my own personal story, I have family and loved ones who have been impacted by community violence and gun violence. And so I'm committed to paying it forward and doing everything that we can in our power with this new level of resource to not only to lessen, but to stop the violence. We're in a crisis. We've heard story after story how nationally we see crime on the rise. And that makes sense because we're in a pandemic. It also makes sense because of what we recognize in terms of the disparities that we see play out day after day in the Black, Indigenous, and BIPOC community. And because of that, we are committed to leading with race. We are committed to bringing a racial equity lens, and we're committed to holding ourselves responsible. What are some of the ways that the health department is responding? We are in the process of standing up a gun violence behavioral health response team. It's a 7-individual team. It's a team that's going to be made up of mental health consultants who identify and come from the Latinx community, the African immigrant community, as well as the African American and Black community. And they have the responsibility of responding in the moment. They're going to be in the field. They will be at the scene. They will be in the hospitals. They will be in the neighborhoods. They will be in the schools. But the new innovation that we're also bringing forward is we are going to have credible messengers that work alongside that team. And you can look at it or think of it as peer support specialists, or simply put, individuals who have lived experience, who have successfully learned how to make a shift in their life through the impacts that they've experienced specific to gun violence. We're also working day after day between not only the health department, but also with Erika Preuitt's department, the Department of Community Justice, where we have a behavioral health care coordinator who works on the ground level supporting not only victims, but individuals who have been charged with getting connected to mental health services or substance use treatment services, in addition to client assistance services. And we know that it's important to have someone, not only a navigator, but again, also credible messengers who walk alongside individuals and validate the experience and bring hope. The other opportunity that we're moving forward between the health department and the Department of Community Justice is we're integrating community health members into our work. And you may say, well, what is a community health worker? It's someone who's been identified from the community, someone who is connected, has demonstrated relationships, and understands and has expertise of the services and supports that also, again, can bring forward not only the voice and the need, but also walk alongside individuals who've been impacted by gun violence to get them connected in the moment, especially in times when they're feeling hopeless. A public health approach means that we're also looking and bringing an anti-poverty lens. Oftentimes when we step back and we think about the root causes, it boils down to survival. We see through lines of food insecurity and houselessness and lack of opportunities specific to jobs. And so when we take a trauma-informed approach, when we look at it from a public health perspective. We also work to look at how do we provide opportunity for folks to not only have support in the moment, but to find hope, healing, and recovery, but also in a way that it can be sustained. All of this might be common sense or sound like a no-brainer, but oftentimes these things, especially when we think about the issues of mental health, when we see rises of substance use, when we see increase in crime, we understand that the root causes oftentimes are rooted not only in systemic racism, but again, rooted in disparate opportunities specific to education, employment, and housing. We recognize the immense value of connecting impacted individuals to services and supports. And so that's why also we have the Multnomah County Behavioral Health Call Center. It's a 24/7 hotline where anyone who's impacted by community violence or gun violence can call and get connected. If you need someone to speak to in the moment, if you need to have support to determine where you can go to get services, if you need support with getting someone out to meet you in the community in the moment where you're at, then we can do that through the Multnomah County Behavioral Health Call Center. That phone number is 503-988-4888. But also, we have no wrong door. So that means that we will work to connect the victims to the Victims and Survivor Services in the Department of Community Justice. We are working to connect all to the services and supports and understand and hold ourselves accountable for what our role is in that. In closing, we recognize this focus of health and bringing a trauma-informed lens is paramount to not only the health and well-being of those impacted by gun violence, but it's also paramount to the larger community. And to that end, we want you to understand that we understand the immediacy, how critical and how crucial it is, and we're working every day in the moment to respond and provide and bring forward a meaningful response. And so with that, we will take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time now for questions. Also, feel free to pull people aside and have one-on-one conversations with them. But if there's questions right now, I'm happy to take those. Yes, I know that the city of Gresham has long desired a community center in their city, and they've had some failed ballot measures to that degree, to that end. I haven't had a specific conversation with the mayor or with the city council, but I don't know whether our Commissioner Lori Stegman, who represents that part of our community, has already. I don't know if anybody else has. No, I think we're always open to having conversations of new and innovative ways that we can help community members feel safe. We will be bringing this agenda item forward next week. The DA has been in contact with all of the commissioners at Multnomah County. We've all talked with him about our desire to have things move more quickly and more effectively, and their office came forward with this idea. Do you want to have a few more words about that?
I think the answer is really almost immediately. We already have recruitments up right now, knowing that we are having these conversations, and It's been our practice to have recruitments posted so we'd be ready just in general if there's turnover. So right now we're already got postings up, and we have attorneys that we're able to rotate up into positions to be able to work on gun violence and be able to backfill some of their positions with this money. So it'll give us some flexibility, but really the impact of this in our office is going to be just about immediate. Yeah, this has been challenging. You know, I mean, this really is for many of the prosecutors in my office have been doing this for 20 or 30 years, once in a career surge in this in violence crime. And so the caseloads are high. And then combine that with the pandemic, it's been really challenging. But what you see, though, is that even in the face of that, they're rising to the occasion, they're making the cases. When we put the data dashboard together, and you could just see that in just this year, in the first 8 months of this year alone, they've made 285 gun-related prosecutions, which is probably more than we've made in the last several years combined. They're rising to the occasion, but this help is critical to them, and the chair and I believe the county gets that when the other commissioners have had. So this is a big deal for them.
Great.
Well, I would say it's definitely not a Band-Aid. I think that what I hope that today's press conference shows is that we're not just advocating for one particular intervention or one particular mode of prevention. We're also adding prosecution and law enforcement. We believe it's a continuum, and that's where the data comes in. It takes a combination of all. That's why we have everyone here from different areas. Erika, Preuitt, do you have something you want to talk about? I know that your team has done a lot of data-driven research.
Thank you for the question. You know, one of the things I think that we get challenged by is what is an evidence-based practice, what is a best practice, and what is a promising practice. And what I would say is that we're all hands on deck. And regarding the crisis that we're in today, that the focus is really on making sure that we're building and growing community supports so that they have the infrastructure to meet the needs of our community, and we're working alongside of them. We can't do it alone. And so we know that when we collaborate and when we are innovative and when we invest in community, that we are really able to affect our clients, and it's a continuum. So as far as what we have as far as evidence-based practices, we engage in those. We invest in best practices, as well as really try to deepen our connections in community and our clients to their communities that they live in. So are there other cities where this has been successful? So what we know, and I think I mentioned it in my comments, is that we have things like the Operation Ceasefire in Oakland. We know that has worked in other jurisdictions. We also know that the pandemic has had an impact on some of those programs as far as the impacts on our community providers. And so we want to engage in those programs and those services and those partnerships that we know have been effective in other jurisdictions, especially jurisdictions that are similar to our own.
I was just going to speak in terms of evidence-based practice, and this is coming from the clinical or the behavioral health perspective. What research demonstrates is that we have increased engagement in services. We see folks who not only increase engagement, but actually complete treatment. But we see it when folks have culturally specific or culturally responsive services. And so what we know based on research is that we have demonstrated outcomes when someone's able to get services and supports that look like them. But also what the research tells us is that we see those same improvements when you integrate a peer or an individual with lived experience, and in this case, the credible messengers. So thank you.
I think we are in uncharted territory, and we are constantly evaluating what we're doing and trying to pivot to do something that we know works. When we see a overwhelming caseload in the DA's office, we're adding more prosecutors. When we see that the community is struggling and calling out for help because they are feeling hopeless, we add peer services and trauma-informed care. When we hear from community members that they want someone who looks like them and is from their community, who's responding to them in a time of need, we partner with our community-based organizations and create that village so that people can get the services they need at home. I don't know that I have a crystal ball, but I will say that I think what we know is that what we've done in the past with having a lock 'em up, throw away the key approach really has not worked. It's expensive, it harms communities of color, and in the end, you don't get the results that you're looking for. Some of the services that we're talking about today will bring short-term impact, and some of this work is long-term, and it's going to take years to develop. But we do need to do all of it, and we need to do it now.
This question's for anybody who's answering. You start about pivoting, and it feels like we're seeing the city leaders, the mayor, and commissioner now saying, yes, we want to rehire police officers, build up those ranks. Does anybody up here want to say whether or not they think that's a good idea, and that will complement your efforts? And if that doesn't happen, is that going to make a lot of this?
I'll call on someone who might have had some experience in that job before.
Anybody?
Could you repeat the question? It's harder to hear over there.
Do you think this, when you heard from the mayor and Commissioner Mounts that they now want to hire more police officers, do you think that's going to happen? And if that doesn't happen, is that going to
I believe the Portland Police Bureau is understaffed. They're under-resourced. They don't have enough officers to respond to all of the events that are happening in their community. They don't have enough detectives working homicide cases to put investigators out doing follow-up leads while literally they're responding to the next homicide. So they need additional resources to be effective. They also need the support of their elected officials and the support of the community to do the very difficult work of intervening when there's gun violence in our community. I know that our deputy sheriffs and our Gresham police officers are out there every day looking for people engaged in criminal activity and looking to intervene to keep our communities safe, and that's vital to building a safe and thriving community.
Maybe you say it to me one more time.
Do you think that, do you agree with city leaders who are now the mayor and commissioners saying, back up? Does that need to happen?
Well, I can tell you that what I experience in my office talking to our attorneys is that cases, we're not getting the investigations that we need put together. And that's not for lack of necessarily wanting to do that job, but because detectives and investigators are running from job to job to job, from call out to call out. And they don't have the time that they need to put in that investigatory work, which is why when I'm talking to the chair, I stress the need for investigators in our office, because we collaborate with the Portland Police, we collaborate with all law enforcement across our region, and we can help fill in some of those gaps. So this is going to be helpful in collaborating with them to shore up some of those needs. And I mean, I can say, and with what the sheriff said, we need those investigations to happen if we're going to make those cases.
I know you're not a city official making this decision, but you weren't, for those who think, oh, maybe that's proof that the conversations and the moves made in 2020 didn't work, and here we go, pivoting back to the tactics. What would you say?
Yeah, I don't see this as a pivot back, and I don't think that we should be trying to go back or think about, what is the way it used to be. I think what you see up here today is the approach that we need to be taking regionally. And so we're doing this at the county level. It needs to be going on also with the city level, where we're working with health and DCJ and community. I think that's the approach that's going to help. So I'm not interested in going back to the way things were, but thinking about how are we leveraging all of our resources in the community. So that's what we'd like to see happen.
We work very closely with the City of Portland. We have a local public safety coordinating council that all the folks here are represented on, as well as the City of Portland. And we know that we need them as a partner, and we talk with them, we work with them on a daily basis. I think what we wanted to show today was, we hear a lot about the Portland Police. We hear a lot from the mayor. We haven't heard as much from what Multnomah County is doing, and we want the community to know that we're working together. And yet we, as the county and all the services, resources we have here, we are strongly, and the sense of urgency that we feel is just as strong as the City of Portland and our other jurisdictions.
Yes, no, thank you for that. So funding was appropriated effective July 1st. And so we are actually in the process of recruiting for the 3 mental health consultants. And we are wrapping up the contract for our credible messengers. And so what will be online first for that team will be actually the credible messengers within probably the next 45 days. And the one thing I also want to add is that while we have a network of community-based providers, and while we also provide mental health services or behavioral health services within the county, what's new, what's innovative is that we're working to build a team that actually has expertise. And so you can think of this team also as a way to kind of supplement some of our general and more broad behavioral health services and supports.
Too many guns in the community, Sheriff Reese?
There's too many guns in the hands of people that shouldn't possess them. So we have a lot of firearms that are in the hands of people that pose a grave risk to our community. That's why it's important that our deputies took 719 guns off the streets in this year alone. That's one less gun that can be used in the commission of a crime in our community.
So the second half of the question, are there changes to state and federal gun laws that are good?
We're always advocating for changes to state law where there's gaps in the ability of our community leaders and enforcement officials to adapt to changes in the nature of crime. So closing the boyfriend loophole in one of the laws that protected domestic violence victims, that's a critical component of that flexibility in state law and how we look to, use the legal system and legislative system to protect people in our community.
Multnomah County has long advocated for stronger safer, sensible gun regulations. And unfortunately, as a local jurisdiction, our hands are tied. We've gone as far as we can locally. The state has preempted just about every aspect of this. So I think that we have been working with our state legislators. Unfortunately, we'll take it, take a look at what is occurring now, and maybe next legislative session they'll be open to making some additional changes. For example, anybody can walk into this building carrying as many firearms as they want, and there's nothing that we can do about it. Even just small steps like ensuring that as a public official I'm allowed to restrict people from carrying guns into my building would be one step that we tried to take last session and didn't pass.
Ms. Clarke, you mentioned some of these bigger issues like food insecurity and climate change. Is the county doing anything to address those?
Yes, we're doing a lot. So from my perspective, when we think about public health, a portion of the response goes back to community-based contracts to expand community capacity. And so through that, the community capacity examples of activities include activities for job readiness. There's activities that work to engage young people in keeping folks engaged in school, because we know that in order to land a living wage, there's benefit if you have education. We also, in the health department, partner with the Department of Human Services as well as the Joint Office in working to prioritize and bring forward strategies to promote housing for individuals, especially who suffer from chronic homelessness. There's so many things, and I'm sure that, others might want to speak to it.
Yeah, I can speak to that as a community partner at Portland OIC. OIC has been around for 52 years, and workforce development is germane to our foundation. Our partnership with the county around the Community Healing Initiative, a huge one of the outcomes is employment. So stable housing and employment. So we have a team of folks who work with family members to make sure that happens. And within our organization, we also have an employment and training division. So we have folks that are working on the county side with families, and then we refer those families and family members to our employment team, and we put folks to work. Working is, in my opinion, a job is one of the most effective social service programs that we have.
I just want to add, we're hiring. So if you want to come to work for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, we need corrections deputies. We need deputy sheriffs. We need people that want to serve and protect our community. We're hiring. You can call me directly or email me, and I'm happy to help talk you through the process of getting a job with us.
Sheriff Reese, how understaffed are you?
Well, it's a challenging time in public safety services. We have about 45 vacancies in our corrections division and 11 vacancies in our deputy sheriffs. We're doing everything we can to fill those vacancies because those are critical roles in protecting our community.
All right, thank you so much, you guys. Thank you for being here today. And again, the entirety of this press conference will be posted on our Multnomah County YouTube page on Multco Presents. And if any of you had any follow-up questions, you can certainly reach out to any of the communications coordinators to get any follow-up questions answered. I know our speakers have some other engagements to go to, but again, thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. Thank you.